NFTs. We touch on DeFi and kind of like the degeneracy of the gambling that's going on there. And we just kind of flesh out his position and kind of how he's come to get there. And it was a nice, fun, casual conversation. So I hope you enjoy this chat with Tony Cai, as this is the first of hopefully many episodes of Sips with Sessions.
Hodl that Bitcoin.
Now, before we dive in, I want to give a shout out to sponsors of the show, LEDN.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin for a whole bunch of different services. The first thing I ever used them for was their Bitcoin backed loans. This is where you can use your Bitcoin as collateral to get a Canadian or US dollar loan. So if you're in a pinch, you need dollars, but you don't want to sell your Bitcoin because one, that's a taxable event, and two, you're worried about buying back in at a higher price point. Well, this could be for you. You deposit Bitcoin, you get dollars in your bank account within 24 hours. When you pay that back, you get back the exact same amount of Bitcoin. Now, they do have a couple other offerings. They've got their Bitcoin and USDC savings accounts where you can earn interest rates of up to 11.7% annually, paid monthly. And they've got their B2X offering, which uses the same loan mechanism to instantly buy more Bitcoin, effectively doubling your Bitcoin on the spot. Now, for a couple more days here, just till the end of September, they've got a deal going on with their B2X offering. If it loads, there we go, where you actually get a 2% bonus if you get a B2X loan, and that's credited back to your USDC savings account. So more or less, you forego the admin fee that gets credited back to you, and you get that in a savings account. You can keep that there, or you can withdraw or do whatever you want with it, really. Now, moving on, of course, we have our friends at... Crypto Cloaks. If you haven't heard about these guys, you need to check them out. A bunch of awesome Bitcoiners got together with some 3D printers and started pumping out amazing swag. Now, I've got something on the way here. I've got my node shell. In fact, it's a new iteration of the node shell because I'm going to be building an Umbral node, and I figured why not do it in style and get a custom shell for it. So that's on the way, but they have a ton of stuff. They have, of course, got sticker packs. They've got the handy dandy Bitcoin grenades where you can put open dimes in them loaded with Bitcoin, give them as presents to people. Of course, you've got the Bitcoin Honey Badger shelving unit where you can store your hardware wallets. They've got sleeves for your hardware wallets like the Cold Card. They've got, of course, the Bitcoin Coaster. They've got night lights. They've got a little bit of everything for everyone. So please do head over to cryptocloaks.com. And hey, if you want a discount, you can use the code BTC Sessions at checkout and get 5% off. So check them out. These guys are incredible. And finally, we have the Cobo Vault. Now, I have done a full tutorial on this thing. It has moved into my regular rotation of regularly used Bitcoin hardware wallets. Now, I love it because it's air gapped, meaning you never plug this thing into an internet connected device. It is completely air gapped. Everything is done via QR code. So that protects the seeds, the keys to your Bitcoin. They're never online. Now, of course, there are other things. It has a secure element on the thing. It has open source firmware, and one of my favorite things about it is the interoperability with some of my favorite wallets. Of course, you can use it with Bitcoin Core. You can use it with Electrum. I use it regularly with Wasabi Wallet, my number one go-to desktop wallet, and I use it regularly with Blue Wallet, which is my number one used mobile wallet. So check out Cobo. Just for reference, I'm using the Cobo Vault Pro because it has the rechargeable battery, which I really love, and they're doing a giveaway. So if you want a Cobo Tablet Plus, which is a steel seed plate that can store the backup to any wallet you have, all you have to do is get on Twitter, retweet the show, tag myself and Cobo, and just let us know why you want one. I'm going to be picking a winner for every show from now until the end of November, so be sure to hit me up there. And with that, let's dive into the interview. Okay, I think I am recording. I think I'm all good. How's it going, man?
Not too bad, not too bad. What about yourself, Ben?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, anybody watching, this is Tony Cai. Welcome. Maybe drop a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, I always say that my co-founder, he's a big part of my background. He's actually has the more interesting backstory. But for myself, like basically, got into the crypto space, specifically Bitcoin space, I guess, in 2017. So basically, uh, my co-founder and I, we were studying at University of Waterloo. And basically what happened was he kept on bugging me about Bitcoin. And then like that was right around the time where it was like the Segwit 2x stuff. So I think there was that extra like attention in the space and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
like for me, I was like, actually funny enough, like I remember the reason I was like, okay, this might be interesting was because he sold me, and this proves like how far I've come. He was like, oh, if you buy Bitcoin now before this date, you'll actually end up with 2 Bitcoins because there will be a fork. And then, and I was like, oh, wow, does that mean I get like double the amount of money? So funny enough, that's how I got in. And then basically, once I started getting my first little bit of Bitcoin on Coinbase, I really started getting into it. And full disclosure, I was kind of like, back then, I was more of a ETH pleb. So basically, I got into the space really like, I would say through ETH. And
Yeah.
the reason because of that
Wait.
was,
We should preface this.
okay,
The reason initially when
yeah,
we got started talking, like we haven't really chatted before, but there was a thread. I can't remember where the thread was based, but basically, it was along the lines of like we've all had our dives through like shitcoinery to get to kind of like being solely focused on Bitcoin, and you kind of said that was your path, and like everybody kind of goes through that. I can't recall. Do you recall what the thread was exactly?
not exactly, but I think you got most of it there. Yeah.
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 So yeah, like I guess the main reason when I first messaged you, I was like, hey, let's talk about the shitcoin journey to the one and only Bitcoin. So I
Yeah.
guess yeah, keep going through your genesis from ETH
Yeah.
pleb to seasoned Bitcoin maximalist.
Yeah, sounds good. So basically, yeah, so basically was an ETH pleb. And I think the reason that ETH at that point for me was particularly interesting was I guess it was mostly because, I came out of Waterloo. That was where Vitalik went. And then like also they had like a bunch of like ETH communities there. And then also the other thing was, being someone who, was in computer science at the time, ETH, I guess like was quite easy for the average like developer type to, especially like JavaScript developers to get into right off the bat. And like, that's, I would say now that I've gone through it is a good thing and a bad thing. There's definitely both sides of the coin in terms of like the quality of developers that you can attract. But then, yeah, so I guess like, that combined with the dev tooling that was available, the hackathons, they made it seem super fun, super cool, so it was attractive for like, 20-year-old Tony back in the day. And then like, that was how I got into ETH. And then so started working at Consensus actually, and then was working on some I would say fairly interesting stuff. Like I was working on a team called Open Law, which was basically allowing you to do legal contracts on Ethereum. Which I love the team, but I have interesting takes on what they're trying to do now. But yeah, so basically, like after that, basically during that time working in Consensus, my co-founder Matt, he was also working in Consensus, and he basically began his slow transition into Bitcoin maximalists, basically because he started working on atomic swaps. So basically, he was working on this team called Equality. They were doing cross-chain Bitcoin, Ethereum, atomic swaps. Really kind of started getting to the sound money aspect of things. And he started like trying to convince me to read up more about sound money, reading stuff like Bitcoin Standard, and kind of educating myself more about Bitcoin, because to most ETH heads, and back then, and I think still today, most people see Bitcoin as just this very antiquated kind of thing that like birthed Ethereum, and now we have this much better kind of ecosystem on Ethereum. I think that's the take that I had back in the time at that time too.
It's,
And
it,
so
it sounds
yeah,
like
sorry, go ahead.
you came in from like a very again, like I guess very much like a developer technology based standpoint of what, what can I build and make work, not
Exactly.
at all from a monetary perspective, it seems
Exactly.
like.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't until you started looking into money itself that you made this shift. Like, do you think
Yeah.
that's kind of like a I mean, it's tough to paint everybody with a single brush
Mhm.
or with broad strokes, but like, do you think that's like a common thing with Ethereum developers where they're looking at it as, hey, technology, not money?
Yes, I actually you hit it right on the nail there. I think like I think that's something that I've noticed like kind of being in both camps, like what the pace what the typical conversation topics go, and where they go. They basically like, ETH people, they tend to focus a lot more about what you can do with ETH and the tech itself and stuff like that. And Bitcoiners, it's the conversation is a lot more philosophical about like money, why Bitcoin is a superior form of money, of course, all that jazz. And so, yeah, I think that kind of difference, dichotomy between like, people focusing on the what in Ethereum and then the why in Bitcoin. I think that's something I've definitely noticed kind of being in both camps.
Yeah. No, so um, were there certain things that kind of were there like tipping points or things that you noticed that kind of tipped you further and further over the edge along the way? Like, was there certain, whether it be from like um, whether it be learning certain things or whether it be like limitations or like what kind of started nudging you? You said your friend, obviously, but like
Mhm.
technologically looking at it, was there certain things that you were like, wait, what about this or what?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was definitely not necessarily like a flip the switch kind of transition. I would say, uh, the thing that really did it for me was actually this latest craze of DeFi mania and the speculation and
You're
that's
not digging the food tokens or
no,
what?
no, I'm not digging that. No, I mean it's funny because like we could have, it was probably, I mean, people have suggested to us as well, like that's something that we could have done, right? That like doing a token on our product and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
for us, like it's a number of things. I think first of all, the way that the communities work themselves, I think there's a very big difference in the way they think about like how to develop products and things in general. For example, like high time preference versus low time preference. Development in ETH tends to be very high time preference, and basically that kind of that really puts a number of things. There's trade-offs with that kind of thinking. Like for example, um, making decisions like launching a token, a yield farming token that might incentivize like a bunch of growth early on, but then like what the ramifications are long term for the product or for the community. There's serious questions about that,
Mhm.
and like for example, and another example might be that folks launching projects which eventually end up getting hundreds of millions of dollars on it, but doing it without any sort of audits, which are, in my opinion, essential if you want to build on ETH or stuff like that, right? And so, like, there's that, and of course, technologically, like, the security thing is always going to be a problem on ETH, because even if you get like some of the best auditors to come audit your product and stuff like that, you pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's really tricky to catch all the possible errors out there because Solidity and Ethereum, it's just there's just too many gotchas out there. And like Bitcoin, like our first product where we kind of half built it, we did a cross-chain approach where we built half of it on Bitcoin and the other half on Ethereum. We were like 99.9% sure that there was nothing wrong with the Bitcoin side of things, the Bitcoin script and stuff like that. It's just there's very limited set of possibilities that can even happen with the Bitcoin side. Ethereum, we can never be so sure. It made us lose sleep, right? So yeah, I think that's what I would say about the technological differences. But beyond that, I think like just to touch on the DeFi mania, I guess like overall, I would say that um, I would say that there has been like some value that has been created as a whole in terms of like, some of the interesting innovations and, the concept of, like a decentralized back stablecoin, like in the form of DAI, backed by the wrong asset, but still kind of interesting, right? Conceptually. And like, there has been some interesting and useful innovation, but then the issue is that, the way that the ecosystem has developed, doing these like yield farming stuff, and it's really created a community of just speculators and made it just for whales, right? It's the DeFi craze is really one that's dominated by whales that are shifting in and out of different pools and whatnot. They're mostly zero-sum games at the end of the day. And in my opinion, they're just not really actually advancing the ecosystem as a whole forward. So yeah, that's kind of like some of the issues that we've been seeing on ETH.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna bring up, because you're talking about DeFi being mainly speculators. This was today. I don't know if you saw this. I retweeted it because it was so stupid. But anyways, Roger Ver tweeted out, having nearly 100x more Bitcoin wrapped for use on Ethereum than in the Lightning Network shows Lightning has been a total failure for scaling Bitcoin. So I retweeted it and quoted, and I said, today I learned that degen gamblers using IOUs on a network with even higher transaction fees to yield farm food tokens happened because people want a scaling solution other than Lightning. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I find it's funny, the whole wrapped. Actually, you know what we could go? I let's go down the route of like Bitcoin on name your shitcoin, but I also want to go down the route of liquid. And the reason I want to touch on this, there's a bit, so like I have a small Telegram group, and we just kind of, it's just like we talk bullshit all the time. But so Blockstream dropped a wallet today for iOS called Aqua. And so it has Bitcoin on it, obviously. And then it has LBTC. So liquid Bitcoin. Those watching that don't know what the hell that is. It's like Bitcoin gets locked in more or less a multi-sig. And the multi-sig is like, I think you need 11 of 15 to go rogue in order to screw you out of your Bitcoin. But those are like the Federation members. And so that Bitcoin is locked in like a 15-part multi-sig between mostly exchanges. And then there's a token issued one-to-one with Bitcoin that has like confidential transactions and 1-minute blocks and, a couple other little features that some may use. It was mainly, at least initially, kind of marketed as a inter-exchange settlement type deal, where instead of exchanges having to go on chain, if they're already all part of like a liquid federation, they could just back and forth that way, which sure, I don't mind that cutting down on blockchain congestion, especially like as it gets into a bull market. That's a nice thing to have. But the new wallet is very much like a consumer facing, like, hey, you can now load up your wallet with Bitcoin or LBTC, or like these like various liquid based stable coins, or like token, like there's some exchange tokens that are liquid based on there. Like personally, like the exchange tokens, no. Like when I look at like a stable coin, I'm like, well, obviously counterparty risk. You can't really audit the dollars that are there in the bank account easily yourself. But I mean, dollars are already shit anyways. So like, I mean, yeah, there's counterparty risk with your bank account too, I suppose. So like, yeah, what's an extra layer of counterparty risk? I'm not going to dollars for safety anyways. So it's just something I wouldn't use. Liquid Bitcoin, to me, at least personally, with their model, it's kind of like an in-between. It's like not as bad as leaving your Bitcoin on a single exchange, but it is still custodial. It's still not Bitcoin. It's just you need 11 out of 15 entities to screw you to lose your Bitcoin. instead of just one. So it's like it's like better than trusting a centralized third party, but it's a low bar. It's kind of my take. Like, so what's your take on, I guess, liquid Bitcoin, and then maybe let's like wrap Bitcoin where it's basically just like BitGo custodying Bitcoin, and you've got like tokens that are issued, and then there's others. Maybe, I don't know what your thoughts on that kind of stuff is.
Yeah, I mean, liquid Bitcoin. So I'll preface this with saying I haven't like done a ton of. We haven't really done any development with liquid just yet, and and I haven't. I don't own any like liquid Bitcoin or anything like that. So this is just kind of like an outsider's perspective. I think like yeah, I think it's better than just relying on one exchange. Like say if you had some Bitcoin on KuCoin or whatever, that could have been in trouble, right? So basically, I think it's superior in that way. And I think what's interesting about liquid Bitcoin is that they add a few opcodes that allow you to have more expressivity in terms of like Bitcoin scripting and like kind of be able to do more kind of interesting, I guess, smart contract type things with liquid. So that's what's interesting on the surface for us. Like basically, I think some of the issues that I see potentially with liquid is that I know that it does require, like I believe last I checked, like 100 confirmations to actually onboard your Bitcoin onto liquid Bitcoin. I'm not sure if that's still the case. I know you can of course get liquid Bitcoin directly. Oh, sorry.
It's I think it's the opposite.
Okay.
I think it's the opposite way out to like, is it withdraw? No, maybe it is actually getting into it. I think the way it is anybody can convert in,
Okay.
but to get out, like to actually unpeg Bitcoin from liquid, you need to go out through a federation member.
Gotcha.
You can also just swap liquid for Bitcoin, but like, yeah, basically if you want actual Bitcoin like swapped out of the protocol, then you need a federation member. Again, I don't know the confirmations. They're shorter confirmations, like it's 1 minute blocks, but yeah, there is a significant waiting time to allow for, if something screws up, that intervention of some sort.
Yeah, and I think like I was checking the Blockstream block explorer for liquid specifically, and the number of transactions per block, I think it's not that great. Yeah, it's like nothing at the moment, but like I think that's something that definitely can improve. So I think we will see some kind of more interesting products come out of that. And I know of course like this is Blockstream's baby, and I know they're probably going to push it really hard moving forward. In terms of like WBTC, yeah, it's interesting. So WBTC is a topic that comes up frequently in Ethereum circles and stuff like that. It's
Let's start with, is that Bitcoin on Ethereum, Tony? Please tell
yes,
me.
it is. It is absolutely 100% not. It's funny. It's it's not like you're sending Bitcoin to an Ethereum address. It's not, the Bitcoin's not on Ethereum. The Bitcoin is custodied by BitGo, and you're just issued an IOU, kind of like paper gold back in the day, right? Where you're submitting your real gold to like a goldsmith or something like that. But like yeah, so basically, WBTC I think is interesting for folks who are okay with that custodial risk, people who are already doing a lot of stuff on DeFi. I think for some of them, yeah, there is a degree of interest there, because it allows you it allows you to kind of bring in some of that your Bitcoin that most of them, I guess, still want to maintain exposure to, because ETH people, most of them, regardless of what you might see on Twitter, they have Bitcoin, and like some of them even have more Bitcoin than, a good chunk of them even have more Bitcoin than Ethereum, right? So like, for those folks, I've heard quite a few of them who maybe will allocate a good chunk of their, not all of it, but a good chunk of their Bitcoin and convert it, mint WBTC with that, and then bring it over to Ethereum. But the issue with that is that you're just kind of taking sound money and you're wrapping unsound financial infrastructure all over it. So basically, you're bringing it into the Jenga
Love
tower
that.
of DeFi.
Yeah.
So that's the issue that I see there, of course. And then like there's more kind of interesting issues if you really want to dig into it. Like for example, you know, when there's another Black Thursday situation, and then people are kind of scrambling to get more wrapped Bitcoin to recollateralize their DeFi loan. Then you can have really weird situations where like the actual Bitcoin and wrapped Bitcoin might actually trade at a much higher price because there's not enough like wrapped Bitcoin liquidity on the markets, and you have all sorts of like weird situations like that that can come into play. But yeah, like for the degens out there, you know, who are already dealing a lot with DeFi, it is a useful tool. But once again, wrapping unsound financial infrastructure over sound money. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that the most stuff, like when I come across it, I'm a lot of my issues with Ethereum tend to be in that they're building skyscrapers on top of shaky foundations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like if the ground can shift beneath your feet, aka there can be you know consensus changes at the drop of a hat, and you're building complex infrastructure on top of it, that's scary as hell. You know, we've seen projects in the past. What was that? Aragon or whatever. Or there was a couple projects where certain hard forks where they basically like didn't work anymore. And some of those projects they're pissed, right? So like, you know, it is scary to have those consensus breaking changes when so much money is riding on top of something. And I think that's kind of the difference in development around this stuff is Bitcoin is so slow and calculated. And as you were alluding to, the kind of high time preference versus low time preference, like on Ethereum, it's like, let's move fast and break things. Let's make this thing. And it should do exactly what we want it to right now, but you're not looking at like second and third order consequences down the road of what will happen. Whereas Bitcoin is like, if we do this tiny change, what possible impacts could that have decades out? And it's just a very different way of thinking. And I think part of it comes from the, you know, oh, this is tech versus this is money. And like, if you don't want to be fucking with money like it's just an app. You want to be very careful and calculated with it, because we pretty much get one shot at this. There's not going to be like another leaderless protocol that comes out of the blue, catches the world off guard well enough to be decentralized as it is without regulators stepping in and realizing it the second time around. So we pretty much got this shot, and if we fuck it up, what do you do? There's no take backsies at this point.
Exactly. I think you hit it right on the head. And basically the other thing, speaking of building, you know, kind of skyscrapers on unsolid foundation, I mean, ETH itself is an unsolid foundation. Talk about this ETH1 to ETH2 transition, right? Like basically, you know, some folks in ETH kind of see it as the savior to a lot of their problems, but you know, it's, from what I've seen, you know, there's significant issues with this whole transition because, you know, first of all, it's an entirely separate blockchain. So the ETH1 blockchain is going to continue running as ETH2 blockchain gets spun up. And then you're actually going to have two separate ETH issuances. So your ETH is still going to be ETH1 token, and to my knowledge, is still going to be issued on ETH1. And then ETH2, you have a separate token or Ether that is minted there. And then somehow they're anticipating that in a couple of years, they're going to merge, and the states on the two blockchain and like the balances and all that kind of stuff is going to merge. And so when I first heard that, I was like, how is that going to work? Like basically, so, you know, there's, and so, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about building on an unsolid foundation, the entire blockchain itself, you know, seems to be in a great state of uncertainty in general. And so, I mean, you have that, and then of course you have the stuff built on top of it that is also unsolid. So
I've got questions for you then. Do you think there's a pretty good possibility that miners just keep mining and there ends up being two totally separate chains that continue? And if so, which will be more classic, Ethereum classic or this classic, and which
Yeah.
one gets to be the more classic of the two?
Yeah, I don't know. That's funny.
Like,
Like,
miners will keep mining, right? Like they're gonna keep
yeah,
mining.
I think folks will. I mean, hard for me to say definitively, but like, if many folks in ETH seem to think that there is that possibility that folks will just keep mining on ETH1, and yeah, then you have like kind of like all interesting issues when it comes to fragmentation and liquidity and silos and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of like ETH classic, I don't know, maybe they're gonna have something like ETH like Vitalik's vision or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. ETH VD. I don't know.
That'd be
Like,
funny.
it's hard to say.
We need a secondary Vitalik to come out and say that he was a real Vitalik or something like
Yes.
that. I don't know. What's Craig Wright doing? He's out of a job, right? He doesn't have any.
Exactly.
He's not busy.
Yeah. Well, maybe Craig Wright will claim to be Vitalik next. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a
Yeah.
possibility. Well, embroiled in controversy yet again. Okay, so my Twitter feed right now, I'm seeing everybody shitting a brick over NFTs today. Apparently, that's the next thing that we're all angry about right now. I mean, I've got some thoughts on NFTs. Like, oh, okay, so I don't know.
Let's
When
hear
I'm
'em.
thinking of NFTs,
Yeah.
like there's certain instances where I'm like, okay, if I got like a ticket to a concert and I was buying it secondhand from somebody and I knew that they couldn't like duplicate the ticket, perhaps that could be something useful. I'm not big on the digital art NFT idea, just mainly because the art originates in a digital form and thus can be literally duplicated pixel for pixel quite easily, other than the fact that one has like an artist's seal of approval and one does not. Whereas it's tough because like, you can go see the Mona Lisa or you can look at a postcard of the Mona Lisa and it's different. Like people fly to Paris to see the original. But I don't know. I'm not super sold on the whole NFT digital art. But I'm also not angry about it. Like if you want to drop 10K on like a picture of a red square, I mean, good for the person that sold that.
Yeah.
I guess, if somebody was going to pay me 1 Bitcoin for like literally a red square, which I'm saying this because I just saw it happen. Somebody dropped like 8K on a red square NFT. But anyways, like, I don't know. What are you thinking about these NFTs? By the way, those watching, it stands for non-fungible token, meaning that it's a unique token that represents a digital asset that is different from any other. So it's, again, I guess, non-fungible. It's separated and differentiated between every other version of it.
Yeah, like for me, like I mean, I think this is probably another the potentially the start of another kind of rapid boom bust cycle thing that we saw with CryptoKitties, right?
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, right? I'm not sure necessarily if it's I'm not sure necessarily like how much value it actually provides, like, but I mean, I'll preface it with saying I'm not an artist, so maybe like there are kind of interesting value propositions that can come from this, especially like digital artists and whatever and what they think. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we're already in a digital form, which means that it's replicable pretty easily. Slapping a sign of approval, signature of approval from the artist that makes it so that people can verify that. I'm not sure if that's too much of a value add, but yeah. So it's hard for me to see much of it. I mean, like I haven't been digging into the NFT space that much, not as much as DeFi definitely. So, and it's also kind of a nascent thing. So we'll see how it develops, but definitely not too bullish on it from my
Yeah,
side.
I think the best maybe an argument against NFTs, because
Mhm.
the idea of NFTs basically is banking on the fact that people will put value in
Mhm.
the artist's seal of approval that you've officially
Mhm.
bought it from them, right?
Mhm.
Um, but the existence of torrents is
Yeah.
literally spits in
Yeah.
the face of that idea. So I don't know, like, will some people probably pay for this stuff? Sure. Do some
Mhm.
people buy a $20 or $30 copy of a digital movie off of Apple? They
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
Does
Yeah.
everybody? I'd say a lot don't.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, that like when you mentioned that, I was thinking like, okay, well for physical art, obviously if you want to if you know if you are buying a piece of art and most folks and you probably want like the authentic piece of it, right? And you will get people to kind of inspect it and see and see if it actually is the real Mona Lisa or what have you, right? And so like for physical art, there is that desire to make sure that you have the authentic, the original.
Mhm.
But like for digital, I don't know if that necessarily translates one to one because like you said, with other digital kind of assets or works, people seem to be pretty okay uh, with with grabbing like a like the duplicate copy or what have you or torrenting stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know if that translates one to one, but
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. There's like there's people are yeah, I don't know. Oh, I'm just seeing. I'm scrolling through because there's a few people
yeah.
that lately there's been more NFTs. Were you around? I'm trying to remember when it was. It would have been in 2017 at some point, but there was oh, it was so stupid, and it was probably one of the more degen things I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
It was the tail end of kind of my dabble into shitcoinery,
Uh-huh,
and I
uh-huh.
think it was around the summer of 2017. So it would have been actually maybe just as you were getting
Mm-hmm.
your feet wet. Um, there was the stupidest idea, and I knew it was a stupid idea, but it was effectively like crypto Twitter personalities in like an NFT thing on like a centralized website. And the idea was if you go and buy like the card, like the trading card of somebody for however much
Mhm.
Ethereum, you owned it with your like Ethereum address, but at any point somebody could come along and pay double the amount to own it temporarily until somebody doubled it to buy it from them.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
there's no way you could like keep it, yeah,
Yeah.
and not sell it if somebody was going to pay double. So it was literally a giant Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. Mhm.
And whoever, like, when it got to that a certain point, whoever was left holding the bag of useless cards of crypto Twitter personalities was going to be the one that just was just shit out of luck. And it literally, like, it got up to the point where, and this is when Ethereum was like, I'm trying to think. It must have been like 500, 1,000. Like it was somewhere way up there. And I remember being like, God, this is, and it was just as the website was kind of getting rolling. And I was like, this is so stupid, but people are going to do this.
Mhm.
It's like, I'm going to take like, I'm going to this is so embarrassing, but whatever. We're talking about our shitcoin journeys. Anyways, I took like one Ethereum and I like sat it on, I don't even know who's, it was some stupid card. It didn't matter. I bought
Mhm.
a card and then some idiot bought it off me for two. And I was like, I'll do it again. And like I did it a few times. I ended up making like 3 grand in a morning off of, and but the worst part was it got to where it was like, there was like $4,000 sitting there, 1,000 of it mine, and it got to the point where like the card just sat there for like, it had been like rolling every 5 or 10 minutes or something, and then it just sat there for like hours, and I was like, I just lost 1,000. More importantly, I just lost however many sats. And I'm sitting there being like, I'm such an idiot, and then it sold, and I was like, Oh, and I converted the rest of that to Bitcoin,
Mhm.
and then I didn't have any more bags from then on in.
Really? So that was like literally your exit
That was
from
my exit. Other than I think uh, I can't. I'm trying to think of the timeline. Other
Mhm.
than like airdrops of like B Cash and B Gold, which I
Mhm.
just dumped as soon as they happened
Right.
for Bitcoin. But
Mhm.
like that was kind of my last dabble. Like I think I had. Uh, there might have been like some random tips or something that came in on other stuff, but there wasn't
Mhm.
really. That was kind of one of the last things I remember.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Were there any like as you were kind of again diving down and like careening wildly out of the like shitcoin
Mhm.
highway?
Yeah.
Were there any like was there any material and stuff that you were kind of diving into, being like oh, or like resources when it came to understanding sound money and money monetary standards and stuff like that? What did you dive into?
Yeah, absolutely. Things that I dived into. Yeah, so I have like a nice little. Oh, I have it right next to me. You can't go without this, right?
Oh
Of
yeah,
course.
oh yeah. There we go.
Bitcoin
Somewhere back
standard.
here. Yeah, yeah. Nice. By the way,
um,
I forgot to ask, what are you drinking?
oh yeah. I am. So I didn't decide. I decided not to go alcoholic today because I
All
had a
good.
little bit of drink
I,
yesterday. But
I appreciate it.
yeah. So I had a nice lip. It's a ginger lemon tea or something
Ooh,
like that. So yeah,
beautiful.
nice
I'm
herbally.
I'm making the bad decision, and I actually so I bought this specifically because there was Bitcoin Magazine did like a YouTuber takeover, and so there was like Max
Nice.
Kaiser and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Keep It Simple and Simply Bitcoin. Those guys were all there.
Mhm.
Um, anyways, yeah. So I got this for that, and obviously there's some left because I'm not an alcoholic, but I have a couple. So I'm drinking It's called Mount Logan. It's a 17-year-old Canadian rye whiskey.
Okay.
It's like 51% though. Oh,
Ooh.
yeah, there we go. Yeah. It's good though. It's
Yeah.
good. But I'm not in like a straight rye whiskey mood, so I've got some like club soda that I'm mixing in with it. But only maybe one or two of these tonight, and then that's plenty for me. But I appreciate your tea. I'm sure I'll do a couple episodes of this with tea or something like that. I'm aching for a painful Monday morning. But anyways, yeah. So Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Bitcoin
obviously
Standard. Yep. Definitely part of that. What else? One of the things. Also, the other one was basically um, a little Bitcoin book by like Jimmy Song
yeah.
and his and the group there, and that was really cool as well. That was like a kind of quick, very kind of nice and tidy, quick read. I
Yeah.
think
Like
it's more
a
suited.
Cliff's Notes version
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
Bitcoin Standard kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So those two, but outside of like Bitcoin specific books or materials, one book that was actually surprisingly was one of the factors in me switching out of shitcoinery was actually this book called "Start with Why" by Simon Sinek, which is like a pretty popular book in like
Yes. Yeah. I've heard of it.
um,
I haven't read it.
business circles, entrepreneurial circles, and stuff like that. I wasn't reading it with the intention of like talking about Bitcoin or thinking about Bitcoin, but like basically he was talking. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was like basically, uh, the premise of the book is that you always need to, as a leader of the company, as a business, you should really be focusing on. You should always have a clear vision of why you're doing what you're doing, and being very clear about communicating that to your audience. And basically, one of the things that he mentioned was that businesses these days don't do enough of that, and instead, what they do is they resort to things like a bunch of different types of manipulations to kind of get people on board or to get customers and et cetera, et cetera. And that was like when I was reading that part, and like he actually named an example where it was
Was it a world computer?
no, actually. So basically, they were saying like how General Motors. So this is completely outside of crypto. This kind of example, but basically, they were saying that General Motors basically in the 2000s, they were losing a lot of market share to guys like Toyota and stuff like that in the US. So they were kind of losing their turf. And basically, to kind of try to prevent that, they started offering a lot of cashback incentives for people to incentivize people to buy more GM cars, right? And like basically, when the recession hit and stuff like that, what happened was they kind of like took a pause on issuing these cashback incentives, and like demand for GM cars fell like a rock. And like basically, that's kind of how I see a lot of this DeFi yield farming stuff, right? And like basically, right now, we went from like $100 million or sorry, $500 million in DeFi to like $10 billion in a matter of months. Some people might say, oh, we found product market fit. But what I think is that it's just people are here for the yield. People are not here necessarily for, advancing the space or growing the space over the long run. And because of that, when this music stops and stuff like that, we're not going to have like, a sustained, I would say like value that was created for Ethereum or crypto in general.
So you don't believe that people bought Sushi because they believed in the future of that particular decentralized exchange?
Yeah, well, I imagine like people must. I imagine people must just like really love sashimi or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I
They
think
maybe they thought it was, they confused it with an NFT because they were actually thinking that the sushi token.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Non-fungible sushi. I think that's
exactly.
a solid sell. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's coming in the pipeline. I'm sure in a couple months, or maybe it's already in the works. Non-fungible sushi.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, So I recalled how we got talking. There was somebody on Twitter was talking about like how maximalism is somewhat closed-minded, and I think I dove into that thread and I said, actually, I found that after being around for a while, it's actually a well-reasoned set of criteria that I came to of what I'm actually looking for. And so I kind of have like from the outset, like, this is why I'm here. This is what I think is necessary to achieve said desired outcome. And anything that doesn't check these boxes, I can just disregard. So it's easier for me to sift through everything and look at it, because very quickly on up to now, on everything except Bitcoin, some of these boxes don't get ticked. And a lot of times, most of them. And so like I wrote this article, and this is the one I actually linked to in that thread when we were talking. So I linked to it, and it's an article I read or that I wrote called "My Path to Bitcoin Maximalism," and it talks about kind of like things that I found necessary because I'm here for sound money and a replacement of effectively central banks, because I don't think people can be trusted to run the money. I think we need like a preset set of rules that can't be fucked with, so that people can't screw with it, so that we actually just have like a baseline for value that we can all use. And so in my article, I outlined, okay, number one, I want sound money. So like already ETH, initially it was like, oh, 100 million cap. Well, it's like 110 now, and like no like specified, there's no real like monetary policy that can be pointed to that will be maintained long term. So for me, that was out. Our borderless and censorship resistant. So like censorship resistance has been basically thrown out the window with a lot of like, for sure with DeFi. Like you saw the KuCoin hack. Basically $130 million of that was frozen by centralized protocols that had God mode. Then is it sufficiently decentralized and secure? And so like I look at that again, we're shitting on Ethereum a lot here, but that's just because you were working on Ethereum before. But like this is pretty broad across everything, I'd say. Decentralization, like I look at that as there's a lot of different aspects to that, but like, can I run it? Can I run it
Mhm.
myself?
Yeah.
You know, if I don't run it, is there anybody running it? Like, you know, aspects of that. And yeah, security as well. Like you were talking about, well, is it really secure if it's constantly changing? You have to gauge it on each iteration, I suppose. I said that being leaderless is actually an excellent thing. You know, centralized figureheads are just like a pain point where things can go wrong. Um, and then I said, how easy is it to make non-backwards compatible changes or hard forks to the protocol?
Mhm.
Again, kind of a lot of it is pointed to the same like reasoning, but yeah, you know, are hard forks easy? If they're easy, it denotes a lack of decentralization. And
Mhm.
then the one of the most important ones to me was, can users self-validate and follow the consensus rules with minimal cost?
Mhm.
And that's a big one, because the other day, I don't know if you were watching, you're probably watching this on Twitter, but on Friday was the, as far as I know, the largest coordinated um, audit of the
Mhm.
supply of Bitcoin that has ever been rolled out. And
Mhm.
at block 650,000, anybody running a node was able to type a simple command and get an answer of how many Bitcoin exist. And simultaneously, like this, I still can't get past, even though we knew it would work,
Mhm.
um, I still can't get past the fact that it was only a 4-minute block. So it was a quick block, but in a 4-minute window, hundreds of people from around the globe were able to type in a simple command on infrastructure that was more or less free, like electricity, and like a cheap laptop or like a Raspberry Pi would do the trick, and
Mhm.
audit the supply of a global currency instantaneously and
Mhm.
come out with the same number.
Mhm.
Um, it blows my mind, and I don't think people really understand the value of this. So I don't know if I'm really segueing to a question here. Actually, I guess my question is, when you were big into Ethereum, did you run a node?
No. Absolutely
What?
not. So like, yeah, I mean, it's impossible. It takes like it takes so long, and everyone just kind of relies on Infura for that, to be honest. So,
Yeah, that's what I
um,
thought.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
More
wild.
not even Vitalik runs like a full. I think they call it archival node, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
no, not even he does, right? So that tells you.
Yeah, that's scary to me. That the founder of a protocol that is the second largest cryptocurrency in the ecosystem
Mhm.
himself
Mhm.
does not run a full archival node
Yeah.
of the, that's, it's for those that are unsure. I think the measure of full archival node is like having every transaction
Yeah.
that has ever happened.
Mhm.
Um, which I do. So I have behind me, I have there's a little Raspberry Pi just out of frame,
Mhm.
running a software stack called MyNode. So it runs a copy of Bitcoin Core, and then it has a bunch of other like software to interact with Bitcoin protocol.
Mhm.
I have a pruned node on my laptop, which is just Bitcoin Core running. And then I'm going to build another one. By the way, I'm just, the reason I have soon to be 3 nodes is because uh, experimentation. But my node, actually all of my wallets point to that node so that I'm self-verifying everything. But yeah, I'm about to build a third one with a Raspberry Pi because there's a project called Umbrel. So get Umbrel on Twitter, but they have like it looks very, very user friendly. And the UI looks really clean and nice. And everything's going to be like an app. If you want to run something, you download it and it attaches onto your Umbrel node. So yeah, like it's very accessible for those that want to run a node to be able to do it with Bitcoin. There's a learning curve, of course, but the infrastructure necessary to do it is next to nil. You maybe need a couple days time to sync if you've got like a slower laptop, but outside of that, it's not bad. I'm gonna make a video on Bitcoin Core because people that maybe don't have the money to get like a Raspberry Pi, I just want to show like, hey, you can hit download, open a program, and leave it running for a couple of days, and you'll have a full node. So I don't know, like, does that kind of make sense to you? Like, was that something that was that at all something in your mind as you kind of shifted this direction that kind of caught your attention?
Don't trust, verify, right? Like that people don't have that mentality in Ethereum, and like basically that's a large reason why what makes Bitcoin as powerful as it is, right? Basically, it's very hard to the ecosystem, the network is very hard to break, but it's very easy to verify if someone did break it, right? So like that's what's useful about Bitcoin. And like you know, the ETH mindset, it's not like that. It's basically like, you know, you're kind of making a lot of assumptions about, you know, the security of not only ETH itself, but of course like the service providers that you're relying on to actually access the blockchain, and you're making assumptions about the safety of the smart contracts you're interacting with, and it's just a lot of assumptions and trust. That's they just don't have that. Don't trust, verify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. I think that's
Yeah.
a pretty good roundup of everything there. I guess at this point, because I do have to run shortly here, but before we wrap up, it's funny, like the whole time you've been talking, oh, co-founder, this and that. I didn't. I'm such an idiot. I didn't give you, and I think I cut you off at the beginning, so you couldn't even fully say like what the hell you're talking about. So I guess if you enjoyed my chat with Tony as we shat on Ethereum for like a solid hour, then be sure to find them. So maybe just let people know where they can find you. Also let them know, and I apologize for cutting you off, but let them know what you're doing, where you're at, and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, basically, one of the co-founders of Atomic Finance. Basically, we were previously during our more ETH days, basically working on kind of a cross-chain approach where you would put in Bitcoin as collateral, and then you get an Ethereum stablecoin as a loan. For us, like our vision has always been to build sound financial infrastructure for sound money. To basically like add value to Bitcoin over the long run by giving folks who hold Bitcoin a way to kind of engage in different meaningful financial activities like lending and you know, margin trading down the road, and while being able to maintain as many of the assurances that you mentioned of Bitcoin as possible. So whether that's the censorship resistance, seizure resistance, open, borderless, all that kind of stuff, verifiable security, and basically that's what we're all about at Atomic Finance. So like right now we're just kind of in the middle of a bit of a pivot out from our ETH, kind of ETH, half Bitcoin approach to a Bitcoin centric approach at the moment, and then basically right now, kind of what we're focused on right now is actually we're building a mini product for your average Bitcoiner to be able to bet on any outcome. So basically betting on Bitcoin price, Sushi price, Ethereum price, etc., or even American election, that kind of stuff. Basically allowing you to put your Bitcoin where your mouth is. It's funny, we actually got this idea when we were talking to Jimmy Song, and he was like, oh, I wanted to be able to shut those shitcoin shills up. And like the only way to do that is putting your money where your mouth is, right? And so basically we're planning to launch in a week or two with folks like Jimmy Song and a couple other Bitcoiners who are looking to also see it as a way to engage their audience and like make bets with their audience and stuff like that.
What you should have had, I wonder if we can shift it over there, but
yeah.
what you should have had was the bet between, I think, American HODL and Keep It Simple Bitcoin, because they're betting on the outcome of Bitcoin price. You should have also had the bet with Peter McCormick and also American HODL, obviously, about the outcome of the American election.
Exactly.
HODL is thinking. HODL is going in on Trump, and it seems that Peter McCormick is leaning Biden, but has less conviction as of lately. He's worried about his choice now.
Yeah.
If you had to take a wild guess, as to what's going to happen in November. What do you think is going to happen?
Wild guess. Probably something like, I mean, there's all this talk about peaceful transition of power and how Trump's not gonna agree to that. And so like, I feel like I'm gonna go with the polls on this one. I'm gonna say like Biden probably, but like Trump's gonna challenge it for sure. Like if that happens. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
I think Trump's going to take it.
You
And
think
it's not that
okay.
it's not that I like I don't like Trump. I obviously don't like Biden. I basically what I'm saying is I don't like the choices.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more not only open but closet support for Trump as far as but also I think there's like just Biden is just kind of like barely there. And so the campaign or lack of campaign from what I've seen is literally like they're banking on enough people hating Trump to get them to the polls to vote for Biden, even though he hasn't really like, what have you seen of him? Not a whole lot. So like, you know, like my sister lives in LA and I was like, so what, how are things? We're talking and she's like, she doesn't like Trump, but, and I'm like, okay, so like, obviously you know, like a lot of like very kind of left leaning people, are they like excited for Biden? And her words were like, oh God, no. I was like, are you worried they're not gonna vote then? Or like, and she's like, I don't know what's happening. Like, I mean, but whatever. She can come home to Canada, so that's. Anyways, it does. I'm kind of a little bit indifferent to the. I'm just like watching with my popcorn. I don't think. I
think most Canadians are, but like, it's interesting.
I found actually, to tell you the truth, I've like shifted out of being political. Like I used to be like, I need this candidate to do that. Now I'm like, I just have like such a lack of faith in government to actually perform that I'm like, I'm just kind of opting out of everything. And I'm like, I don't know. Bitcoin is my vote. That's my vote. What else?
I totally agree. Like basically, like, you know, the way I look at it, you know, left or right, what have you, you know, like money is going to be printed no matter what, and like we're going to have probably a lot of money printing that's going on, especially in the next couple of years, because you know the right probably wants to prop up the economy, and then the left wants to, you know, support the you know, the people who are out of a job, and so like you probably will get a lot of money printing either way. So that's how
I would say politically on a social spectrum, I'm live and let live, and on a monetary spectrum, I'm incredibly conservative because I want sound money. What do you vote for that? Nobody is fiscally conservative, and nobody is live and let live on the left and the right. So what do you do? Like, there's nothing. It's like you pick up a ballot and it may as well just be a middle finger in your face because there's nothing for me. So I vote Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. We need a Bitcoin candidate at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. We have one. It's in my cold card and my Kobo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tony, honestly, I had a really good time chatting with you. I will cheers you through the camera. Clink. This is, by the way, this is my buddy got me this. This is my shield glass because I'm like a big marble nerd. But thank you for the chat. I hope everybody enjoyed this. And yeah, man, good time. Right. Check out Tony.
Do it again sometimes. Yeah,
for sure.
Good.
Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. Now, if you're here on YouTube, please do hit like, subscribe, and share. All of those things really, really do help. And you can hit up Tony. There's links to both his Twitter and the Twitter for Atomic Finance down below. As always, if you want to help out the show in another way, you can always hit up the sponsors. That was LEDN. You can get 50 free bucks if you do opt to use that link and sign up for a loan. That's in the show notes. And they've got the deal on B2X until the end of September for a couple more days. Check out Crypto Cloaks code BTC Sessions for 5% off, and check out Cobo Vault. There's a link down below for that. And don't forget to retweet the show because you could win a tablet plus the steel plate to store your seed. And if you really loved what you saw, you can always hit me up with a Lightning Network tip at my tippin.me page. That is tippin.me/@ BTC Sessions. And with that, I'm out. Have yourselves a wonderful evening, a wonderful rest of the day, wherever you may be. And I'll see you next time for your daily session and now Sips with Sessions.